Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely crucial. We are unpacking the delicate and frankly precarious balance between India's massive economic ambitions and its stark ecological reality. We're going to break down the hard data, the core definitions, and most importantly, the blueprint for how we actually move forward. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. What is the environment? 2. The state of India's environment. 3. Rethinking growth and sustainability. And 4. Strategies for sustainable development. Let's get started. Part 1. What is the environment? The baseline of our existence. So before we can really understand the crisis we're facing, we kind of have to establish what exactly we stand to lose. At its most basic level, the environment is the sum total of all living, or biotic, and non-living, or abiotic, elements that influence human life. For biotic elements, think of your lush forests, diverse wildlife, and fisheries. On the flip side, the abiotic elements are the physical foundations, the water, land, sunlight, and air. Together, they form this incredible planetary inheritance that you, me, and literally everyone else shares. Now, looking at this planetary inheritance, there's a really crucial difference in how these resources operate. Take renewable resources, things like trees, fish, and water. These are amazing because they can regenerate. A continuous supply remains available, provided we actually manage them responsibly. But then you have non-renewable resources, like petroleum, coal, and iron ore. And these are strictly finite. Once they get extracted and used up, they are gone for good. Understanding what can bounce back and what can't is pretty much the foundation for this entire conversation. And that brings us to the 4 vital functions the environment performs for us every single day. First, it supplies resources for production. Second, it sustains life through biodiversity. Third, it assimilates waste. Basically, it acts like the ultimate unpaid roomie cleaning up after our massive consumption habits. And fourth, it enhances our quality of life through aesthetics. Just think of the sheer beauty of an unpolluted river. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The environment can only perform these functions if we stay within its limits. Which leads us to a fascinating concept called absorptive capacity. This is the environment's ability to absorb degradation. There's this brilliant metaphor from environmental economics that I absolutely love. Think of the environment's carrying capacity exactly like a ship's plimsoll line. You know that load limit mark painted on the side of a hull? If you load a ship above that line, it sinks. It's that simple. When our resource extraction exceeds regeneration and our waste exceeds the environment's absorptive capacity, we cross that plimsoll line, and that sinks us straight into crises like global warming. All right, part 2, the state of India's environment, a stark reality check. Unfortunately, we're seeing that ship ride dangerously low in the water right now. To ground our understanding in the absolute latest facts, we're going to look at the flagship State of India's Environment 2025 report by the Center for Science and Environment and Down to Earth. This is our main source today, and it paints a highly detailed, objective, and frankly concerning picture of where the nation currently stands when it comes to pollution and resource pressure. Now, what's really interesting and staggering about this is the number 27.77%. That is the percentage of India's total land area that is currently degraded. To put that into perspective, that's more than 5 times the nation's 2030 target of 5.46%. India's even seen a 1.5% increase in the area under desertification since just 2021. The very ground we're building this economic ambition on is quite literally under immense stress. Then, remember that waste assimilation function we talked about earlier? Despite bans on certain single-use items, India's plastic waste generation hit a record high of 4.14 million tons in the 2022-23 period. To visualize that, that is roughly the weight of over 11 Empire State Buildings in sheer plastic. It is a massive leap from just a few years prior, and we are pushing the environment's ability to absorb our waste to the absolute brink. And the situation in the water systems, equally alarming. The data on heavy metal contamination is terrifying, to be honest. Out of 870 river water quality monitoring stations, India tested a mere 37%. But of that small fraction that was actually tested, nearly half recorded alarming levels of toxic heavy metals. We're talking arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. In 38 stations, high levels of 2 or more of these were detected. This isn't just a science problem on paper. This compromises the exact water that sustains local agriculture and flows right through communities.
So, what does this all mean for the big picture? Well, this environmental stress is directly impacting India's Sustainable Development Goals, specifically SDG 13 for climate action. The numbers highlight a severe gap. For disaster preparedness, the current score is just 19.2 out of 100. That is far below the target of 50. And the health toll, the disability-adjusted life years attributed to air pollution, is nearly 3,500 per 100,000 people, which is almost 3 times the target limit. We are rapidly losing momentum here, and it's taking a very real toll on public health and resilience. Part 3. Rethinking Growth and Sustainability. A Paradigm Shift.
So this brings us to a really critical crossroads. How does a developing nation continue to lift millions of people out of poverty without completely destroying its own ecological foundation? That necessary paradigm shift is beautifully captured in this famous quote from the 1987 Brundtland Commission. It defines sustainable development as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This right here is the moral and practical core of sustainability. It's about preserving the quality of life for those who haven't even been born yet.
And this brilliantly illustrates the line between the old way of thinking and the new. Traditional economic development has always focused strictly on per capita income, material welfare, and technology. The problem? That's often at the fatal expense of natural resources. But sustainable development expands that lens. It demands a focus on long-term ecological balance, social equality, and environmental protection. It ensures that our financial growth doesn't trigger the collapse of our environmental Plimsoll line. Part 4. Strategies for Sustainable Development. The Blueprint for the Future. Okay, so the theory is great, but how do we actually operationalize it? Because everything is so deeply interconnected. Just think about it. Overexploitation of natural resources leads directly to resource scarcity. For example, food production needs to double in the coming decades, but as we saw, over a quarter of the agricultural land is already degraded. Meanwhile, this overexploitation feeds right into climate change, causing extreme weather. It's a massive feedback loop, and a systemic, holistic response is absolutely necessary to break it. To break that loop, leading environmental economist Herman Daly proposed a very specific operational blueprint. Think of these 5 rules as drawing our new, unbreakable Plimsoll line. 1. Limit the human population to a level that's actually within carrying capacity. 2. Technological progress needs to be input efficient, not input consuming. 3. Extraction of renewable resources must never exceed their rate of regeneration. 4. Depletion of non-renewable resources must exactly match the creation of renewable substitutes. And 5. Inefficiencies from pollution have to be corrected. If we follow this blueprint, we keep the ship afloat. We have covered a ton of ground today, from the fundamental jobs our environment does for us, to the stark reality of India's current ecological thresholds, and finally, the actionable blueprint we need for a sustainable future. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder. Will we choose to live within our planet's limits today, or will we continue to borrow from a future we simply cannot afford to pay back? The choice is entirely ours, and as the data shows, the time to act is right now. Thank you for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning and keep asking the big questions.